This Torah portion is the sixth Torah portion of the first book of the 5 books of Moses. So it's the sixth portion in Genesis. And as we're slowly moving along in the process, hold on a second, it's over here. As we're slowly moving along in the process, basically, we go from the creation, we go to the personalities from Adam, from Noah to Abraham, and now we're introduced, last week we were introduced to Isaac, and now we get a little bit more of Isaac, and we start to learn more about relationships, communication, parenting. We're moving more from just the ideological and theological, and monotheistic experience of our matriarchs and patriarchs, but also how they connect with each other. Because Torah is not something that we just need to study and appreciate from a distance in terms of what the greats were doing, but it's also important for us to study it in terms of, as I always try to give in my classes, and those of you who've been around me enough know, it's always about how we can relate it to me, to you, to here, to now. So we're going to try to do that again in this class. So we have the portion of Toldot, and the name of the portion is a critical thing to appreciate. We have 52 portions in the Torah, and each portion has its unique name. And these are interesting because in Judaism, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, but all of a sudden when it comes to the portions of the week, we really don't have too much dispute about it. Even if you move off the Orthodox grid into conservative and reform, you don't have too much, as far as I know, which is almost shocking, too much argument in terms of what the name of the portion should be. It's pretty much was established and it's pretty much accepted. So when we have this week's portion of Toldot, it begs the question, why? Because the name is indicative of a major thrust of a main theme of every portion. It's not necessarily the totality of the portion, but it's a main thrust of it. So the fact that we were to choose this name Toldot, it behooves us to understand what's behind it. Now it's interesting that it says, Eile Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham. These are the, Toldos loosely means generations or progeny, future, but more generations, probably the best translation for now. These are the generations of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham. Abraham begets Isaac. Eile Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avram Holodes Yitzchak. Now, not too many weeks ago, we actually also had this opening where it said, Eile Toldos Noach. These are the generations of Noach. But when it came to the portion of Noach, they didn't call the portion Toldot, the generations. They actually used his name. They said it's Noah. No one refers to the second portion of the Bible as generations. It's referred to the portion of Noah. Now, if we're going by names, maybe we should go ahead and refer to this Torah portion as the portion of Yitzchak. I mean, after all, Yitzchak is a patriarch, and that's a pretty big deal. So maybe if Noah gets to have a portion under his name, there's not a lot of names. There's only 52, right? So why didn't we give Yitzchak that sort of love and that sort of credit? So we'll get back to and hopefully answer that question soon, but something to keep in mind, obviously, to notice and understand that there's something unique about why every portion has this unique name. Now, one of the things that's important to see from the offset, people ask the question, why is this repetitive language that this is the generations, these are the generations of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham, Avram begets Yitzchak. Why is this double expression? If we say Eile Toldos Yitzchak, if Yitzchak is the son of Abraham, then obviously Avram begot, Yitzchak. So there's a lot of answers to this, but for the purpose of this class, we're going to reserve one. And one is that there was no generation gap. Abraham and Isaac walk hand in hand. Abraham dwells and quells in that his son is Isaac. He's very proud of him. And Isaac is also proud that his father is Abraham. Now, the reason why that's important is because on the face of it, they're 2 different personalities completely. Abraham is this outgoing personality, pitching tents, communicating, very vivacious, open doors, running to get people. He's a Pied Piper. And Isaac's more quiet. Even in terms of finding a match, we see that Abraham gets a servant to get Rivka, but Isaac kind of stays where he is. He doesn't move around too much. We see later on in this Torah portion, it talks about Isaac that he dug wells. And what's the significance of that? We're going to touch upon that too. But we see that they're very, very different in styles. Well, Abraham is extroverted, Isaac is introverted. Abraham understands the way to get the message out there is social media, push it out there as wide as possible, draw the largest tent you can, have as many people come in, conversate with them, talk to them about your ideas and your thoughts. Isaac has a different approach. Isaac realizes that after my father does that, in order for it to sustain itself, in order for it to actually have staying power, you have to go a little bit deeper. And perhaps you can say even this class is indicative of, let's say, digging a well, because we're going in a little bit deeper. We're trying to understand our Torah, our weekly Torah portion in a more significant, personal way. And Isaac felt very strongly that if you don't have this way of going deeper into yourself and into understanding what's going on, then you'll lose the excitement of this first, so to speak, impression that Avram was giving. So one of the key messages right away is we're allowed to be radically different than our parents. And yet at the same time, we can be proud of each other. We can continue to walk in terms of a common goal. I'm not suggesting that everybody in this class has a common goal. Everybody has their stuff to work out. This is not the time and space for that sort of experience. But we're talking about Abraham and Isaac. The takeaway is to appreciate that it is possible. It is possible to have a total different style, total different personality, and yet still appreciate each other. Now this takes work, but it's there, and we see that it's there from this week's Torah portion. One of the differences of Abraham and Isaac is what we call kamus versus echos. Kamus is the best way to describe kamus is volume. I'm thinking of a better word for it, and quantity, and echos is quality. There's also rutzah v'shuv. Rutzah is a very Kabbalistic term. Rutzah is the part that I just want to cleave to God and run to God. And in other words, I'm going outside of myself. And shuv is I'm going more internal. I'm going more inward to find God. And this we see in terms of the digging of the wells. Abraham, if you get a chance to scan over this week's Torah portion, you'll see that Abraham started digging the wells, and Avimelech, the king, would go ahead and fill them up. And Isaac has to go ahead and remove the dirt of these wells that were stagnant for a long time and to re-dig inside them in order to tap the water that's on the bottom of them. Isaac recognizes that in order for us to sustain a connection, we have to go deeper inside ourselves and look for more than what meets the eye. That's very different than having a big banner and a big sign. So even though these may seem as trivial subtleties, they're far from it. These are actually very deep concepts that the Zohar talks about, and I encourage you to go further, and do your own homework more on that. The one thing also to understand is that the idea of digging and redigging a well is not to be satisfied that I have a well that gives water. Because a well that's not being used eventually can decay and rocks can crawl into it and water can evaporate or dry out. And it does take a continuous effort to continue to dig into it. So there's a certain element that you're struggling always. You never arrive. You never dig a well to the point where I found a well that's to the top and now we're good. And everybody grab your buckets and we made it. So often in so many factions within Judaism, I can't speak for conservative reform because I don't know too much about the inner workings there, but I have to imagine it's probably similar. But I can speak certainly in terms of the Orthodox scope on some level. There are so many different factions that work hard to try to maintain or find the perfect plateau. So many synagogues say, and I mean, this is obviously pre-COVID, come to our synagogue. We figured it out. And we have the Women's Auxiliary Club, and we have a tennis club, and we have a bingo night, and we even have a decent rabbi, and a chazan, and a havdalah. And if you pay dues to this membership, if you join this particular club, this particular temple, you'll arrive. You'll reach spiritual euphoria. So I would tell you that anyone that promised you spiritual euphoria, walk away. Because it doesn't exist. That's not how the Torah designed the relationship that we're supposed to have with God. And I'm talking about even the more religious and extreme ultra-Orthodox, there is this idea that if you only look a certain type and act a certain type and clock in a certain amount of hours of Torah study, you'll make it. And so I'm here to tell you that we learn from Yitzchak, it's not the case. You have to constantly dig and redig, and that's the struggle that requires us to dig all the time. And I can just tell you personally, sometimes you reach a certain high, you've been studying hard, you've been looking and you think you've reached there and you have this sense of connection, and you take your foot off the gas. It doesn't take long till you feel empty and you need to fill up the gas. And filling up the gas is what we're all doing right now in many ways. Anytime you study Torah, anytime you do mitzvot, anytime you pray, you're filling up your own spiritual gas tank. And sometimes we feel in the mode of Abraham, which is important too, but sometimes we're like Abraham, we're running around doing a lot of things and getting a lot of people and making a lot of noise. And it's important because it's critical, because the example is given sometimes if you're an ambulance driver and you have a patient in the back, and you know you need to get this patient to the hospital because the patient has only minutes to go. But if the gas tank says empty, then you have to stop and get gas. You have to stop in order to get the person to the hospital. You can't run around thinking, I'll just drive faster. I'll just go harder. Because at the end, what's going to happen? The ambulance breaks. And then you're real trouble to figure out how to get your patient to the hospital. Sometimes we have to stop and get gas. And that's the idea that Yitzchak is representing. Avram is running around, he's moving from location. Yitzchak doesn't move locations. He stays where he are, he's filling up the tank with gas. So in a certain level right away, we see that there's this sort of dichotomy between Avram and Yitzchak, and each has its value. We learned the value, obviously, of Avram last week. It's clear to let everybody know, hey, guess what? New game in town, new sheriff in town. You can believe in God. Everybody can have connection. Come Yitzchak and says, let me show you how to fill the gas tank. Let me show you how to go ahead and maintain this. So that's from the onset of the Parsha. Moving a little bit more into the Torah portion, as an overview, we have where Rebecca is pregnant, and we learned that she has twins, Esau and Jacob. And every time she passes by the synagogue, the local temple, she hears a kick. Every time she passes by the church, she hears a kick. She doesn't know what to do. There's a confusion. She wants to know if her kid needs therapy. She's worried. There's a struggle inside. Which one is it? Every parent wants their kid to have a straight path, a healthy life. And no one should have to struggle spiritually in this dichotomy of, do I believe in this way? Do I believe in that way? I do believe in God. I don't believe in God. A parent wants their kid to have a certain sense of happiness. Why should anyone go through life in this sense of existential struggle? And so she goes to the rabbis and she says, what's going on? I pass by shul, I hear a kick there. And she's worried that it's one person who can't make up their mind. You know, she's going to have a kid who grows up with schizophrenia. I don't say schizophrenia, I call it the Woody Allen Jew. Every Jew that I know has this issue. Sometimes we feel that we're close to this, and sometimes we don't feel close to this. But she's the first one that's really dealing with this. So she goes to the rabbi, I guess, and it's her therapist. And the rabbi says, guess what? You have two different personalities inside you. Now, we spoke many times in this class that there's different levels to understand Torah. It's called Pshat, Remez, Drush, Sod. Pshat level is on the face of things, how we're supposed to understand Torah. Remez is how it's hinted to. Drush is how we deduce, and Sod is the esoteric, the secrets. Usually in this class, we move a little bit around these two different levels of studying. So on the face of it, yes, she has two different children. She has an Esav and a Jacob. But on a deeper level, what we're telling her is that every single person carries both of these personalities inside of them. And that's really a struggle similar to the struggle that we talk about redigging. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You see, as we move further into the Parsha, and we talk about the story of where Isaac wants to bless Esau, and Rebecca goes ahead and goes through an elaborate scheme to trick her own husband so that her son Jacob can swindle out the blessings from his own twin brother Esau, right? We have to discuss a little bit what's going on over there. The family dynamics seem to be a little bit fractured. And we see that in this place over here, once again, there's a certain element of the struggle that takes place between this sort of experience. So what happens over here right away we say that, hold on a second, that there's two types of delicacies. Isaac says, bring me delicacies. He summons Esau to go out to the field and get whatever it was, this certain porridge soup with deer, who knows exactly. There's commentary on that. And why does he say plural delicacies? On this, the Kabbalists learned the following. There are two types of delicacies that exist in terms of your general food group. One is what we call sweet, like desserts, and one's savory. One's sweet, one's sharp. Personally, I like savory more than I like sweet. Some people like sweet more than like savory. I like a little bit of both, but mostly that's what I like. So we say the same thing happens in terms of Hashem and what he appreciates from his children. There is a certain sweetness that exists when someone is locked in all the time. He's praying to God. He's loving everybody. He's doing the right thing. He's learning Torah, doing mitzvahs. He's a champ. It's a beautiful thing. And then there's the one who struggles. There's the one who goes through a tremendous amount of effort just to come to a Torah class, just to light a Shabbos candle, just to put on tefillin, just to be accepting of a family member. These are difficult challenges. And these are what go under the category of delicacy of savory. So over here we see once again that there's a certain allusion to this multiple experience or this struggle experience that even Isaac, recognizes. But let's go a little bit further, and then we'll come back to some of the questions of Toldot as to the next big question that I wanted to discuss with you tonight. We know that Rebecca is one of the matriarchs. And we know, obviously, she's enshrined as one of our matriarchs for all time. And obviously, she's beyond the tzaddiket, beyond the righteous woman. And so is her husband. How is it possible that she goes ahead and goes behind her husband's back to have this elaborate scheme to, so to speak, even steal the birthright, to steal the blessings from her own son to another son? She goes and she gets, goat fur and puts it on Jacob's hands so that when Isaac, his own father, touches it, it'll smell and feel like Esau. Seems pretty nefarious. How does she go out of her way to do that? It's a big question. A lot of comments on this question. I'm going to share with you an answer that I have for you tonight. Besides, if the blessings were so valuable that she understood they were so valuable, and she recognizes how valuable they were, so how dare she, in a certain way, go behind the back? If there's such a righteous person whose blessings will change the future of all eternity, of what will be the higher of and the future of the Jewish people, is the ones who either gets his blessings, or perhaps if you don't get the blessings, it's going to change the future. If so much weight is on it, then go to your husband and have a conversation. It's probably not a bad thing to do. Say why. And the Bible is very, very clear about who Esau is and who Jacob is. It says one's a man of the field, a hunter, and one's a man of the tent studying. So why doesn't she have that conversation? There is a commentary that I wanted to share with you from the Chidush Harim, who was the founder of the Ger dynasty in probably late 1700s. He's a fascinating personality and character. He personally had a tremendous tragedy in his own life. He had 13 children, of which 12 passed away before their time while he was alive, and only one lived, who ultimately became the Sfas Emes and became the future of the Ger dynasty. For more on that, you got to Wikipedia and Google. And he shares the following idea. He says that Rebecca, being the consummate Jewish mother, was able to see in the future. She was able to see that there'll come a time when the Jewish people will struggle with their identity and will do everything they can to camouflage who they are so they can get a certain level of acceptance in the society that they find themselves in and the whims of the time that they find themselves in. And we know in terms of the major religions that are out there, which is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, we are by far the least observant, the least religious. The Pew reports in the last 10 years have polled Jews that openly say they don't identify as Jews. Can you imagine a Jew openly identifies that they're not a Jew? In other words, they don't identify with the religion. Their parents were Jews, but they don't. So it's a tremendous amount. It's like a crazy thing. And we know the struggle of the Jewish identity. That's pretty complex. We've changed our names continuously from many societies. Very few have changed their names more than we have to, so to speak, blend in. And I remember I could hear my father saying this joke when he would give classes. He says, at the end of the day, he says that he doesn't know why people change their name from Greenstein to Green. He says, your neighbors know who you are anyways. At the end of the day, you can run, but you can't hide. So what's this whole elaborate scheme of changing? And so Rebecca understands this. And she wants that even her children in the future, who may fall susceptible to trying to camouflage their identity, maybe they're scared of anti-Semitism, maybe they're tired of the abuse, maybe they want a new start, maybe Judaism was never fed to them in a holy, happy, healthy manner. Maybe the light of Torah, the experience of what it means to be a soulful Jew has truly never resonated. The teachers were abrasive. Hebrew school was too long. Their friends were playing Little League while they had to practice bar bat mitzvah lessons. I'm just curious, by raise of hands, did anybody see The Serious Man by the Coen brothers? You did, very good. Okay, so you can remember a lot of the nuances in that flick that they talk. You can see that they're disparaging their own experience of bar bat mitzvah, making fun of it, which is, I'm not upset about it. It's they're artists and they're sharing their experience. Fine, but hold on one second, please. I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay, thank you. We're back. So we see that this experience of trying to camouflage one's identity is very, very prominent, sadly, in our world. But I didn't come here to, beat up on that. On the contrary, I'm saying what Rebecca is seeing. She says Jacob has to give the Jew, who maybe on the outside is dressed a little bit to fit in, but on the inside is a Jacob. On the inside, there'll always be a Jacob in there. So there could be an Esav expression on the outside, but inside there's always Jacob. And she realized that if she has a conversation with her husband to give the blessings to Jacob as Jacob looks, a religious Orthodox Jew, then that's who's going to receive these blessings of the future sense of spirituality and connection to God. It'll be deemed as only if you're observant, only if you look the part, and you sound the part, and you walk the part, and you talk the part, then you merit these blessings. But Rebecca was able to see much further than that. She was able to understand that not all of us know how to look the part. Not all of us know how to talk the part, or pray the part, or study the part, and yet she realizes that we are the future too. And we have the opportunity to turn around our lives as well, or to plug in at a higher level. So she creates this elaborate scheme in order for the Jacobs of the world who look like Esav should also get the blessings. So she's the ultimate tiger mom. She's the ultimate one who's trying to figure out how to go ahead and give her children this sort of blessing and this sort of future, even if they're not looking the holiest. We can talk about her feelings towards Esav. That's also her son. What happened there? We can say that for Q&A, but briefly, I could say like this. Isaac tried hard to transform Esav, and that's why he gave Esav all the love. Isaac wanted to give Esav the blessings because he felt if he can channel Esav's energy as the hunter and channel it more healthier, then it would be great to have that sort of experience in our family. But Rebecca didn't see it that way. Didn't see that was happening. She didn't see that Isaac was being successful. Esav proved that he was on a mission beyond any teachable experience. And therefore, she wanted to navigate the blessings into what she saw. She realized that we weren't going to be perfect. She realized that we're going to try to camouflage and assimilate, but still the Jacob inside of us never leaves. So that's ultimately what I wanted to share with you in terms of this class. And now we'll go back to the name of the portion, and we'll conclude with this, and then we'll open up for questions. Now we can understand why this name of the portion is called Toldot. The power of a person is not in their name or even who they are. The power of a person is what they accomplish, what their future generations are going to be. Isaac didn't care to have the name of a portion after him. What he cared for is that the future of what he stood for will always be, immemorialized and canonized for everyone to learn from it and be. So while Noah gets the name of his portion on himself, but the generations, it's not called the Toldot Noah because they weren't that hot, they weren't that exciting, and the generation wasn't that exciting. But the generation of Isaac and the future generation was something that the Torah felt critical to go ahead and call Toldos. Generation is not a simple thing. You've heard it many times, I'm sure, the door of a door, right? That's what it's all about. The door of a door. There's another idea on the door of a door. Real quickly, Rav Mendel of Kutsk once said, with regards to from generation to generation, and this is a little bit of a sidebar, but it's connected to this generation idea. Many people say, let's be Jewish so the next generation stays Jewish. That's the way most people understand the door of a door, right? If we have a Jewish home, then hopefully our children will have a Jewish home. Or if we do Passover, hopefully our children will do Passover. So the question becomes, this was asked by Rav Mendel of Kutsk, also Hasidic Rebbe, if everybody is being Jewish so that the next generation is Jewish, who's actually doing Judaism in real time? Everybody's doing it for the next generation. So the door of a door shouldn't just be about doing it for the next generation. The door of a door is right now. You want to do something for your future? Do it for yourself. Do it because it's important to you. And then it'll become important to your future. God willing, you should all be blessed with families and children, dozens of them, and they're going to follow what was important to you, what was valuable to you. Not what you told them to do, not what you did for them, what you did for yourself. Whatever you do for yourself, that's what they're watching. That's what they're emulating. They say, that worked for mom and dad. They like that. They took vacations. They didn't take vacations. They fought on vacations. Oh, we don't like that either. Whatever you do, that's what they're going to see. That's what they're going to watch. And that's what they're going to try to emulate. So back to our moment over here. Toldos is about generations. It's not a small idea. It's not just a name, Noah. Noah, interestingly enough, comes from the word tranquil, Noach. Yitzchak, in our portion, comes from the word laughter. What we're positing by naming this portion Toldos of Yitzchak is if you want to go ahead and have the magic antidote of what it takes to have a meaningful generation so the next generation becomes meaningful, it's not enough to go for tranquility. Don't go for the well that's perfect. Don't go for the sign-up sheet that says you've arrived. That's looking for tranquility. I'm not against tranquility on vacation, for sure, but it's not real life. Real life are turmoil. Real life is ups and downs. Real life does hit us in a way that we can never really ever predict it. Like the moment we find ourselves in on a Zoom class during COVID-19, 2020, strangest of times. But that's real life. No one can go ahead and script a perfect life. We have to be ready for the trials and tribulations that happen in our moments and happen throughout our life. That's told us. And guess what? If we're able to receive that and embrace that and lean into that, that's when we achieve the higher level of tranquility, which is laughter, which is joy. When we're able to embrace the challenges around us and recognize that we are on a bit of a roller coaster, that will bring us joy. I'll conclude with one last idea. I heard this from Steven Spielberg's mother when I was out in LA. She was 90 years old. She ran a restaurant. She ran around like a little buzzy bee, and great person. She had passed away a few years ago, but real character. And she said to me one time when I was in the restaurant, she says, and she was older and running around because that was fun for her. And she said, if you're 85 years old and your head doesn't hurt you, and your heart doesn't hurt you, and your hip doesn't hurt you, and you don't have a problem walking, then you're probably dead. This is what she was telling me. You know? It was very funny hearing it from her. And she would laugh when she said it. We're not looking to be tranquil. That's not the goal in life. Not in our stage for sure. The goal is to be able to manage the waves as they come, lean into them, surf them, enjoy them, come up for air and breathe and do it again. And when we are able to do that, that's when we can find joy. That's the generations of joy that we will create, God willing. So let's learn from this week's Torah portion through the wild ride of Rivka having the twins of Esav and Jacob and the whole story. Let us learn from them how to somehow continue to manage. And let us remember that there should come a time between ourselves and those around us that may feel the need to look a little different, to act a little different. Let us never forget that inside of our differences, or what we may appear to look like, there's a perfect Jacob inside. There's a perfect Jewish soul inside that's truly waiting to come out and be shined. And that's what needs to be, and that because they got those blessings. And we see that over and over and over again. I see it as a rabbi many, many times over. People who have no real connection or strong connection to Judaism want to identify, even though they spent a lifetime of assimilating or I like to say camouflaging amongst their other different societies of life. But ultimately, they can never truly get comfortable in that because they want to shine their own light. So we'll conclude with the blessing. May we merit, all of us, to be able to dig in the wells, dig deeper, have more of a flow, and shine our own light, first and foremost from our own soul, and trigger the lights of others. On that note, we are today going into the third night of Kislev, and 3 weeks from tomorrow night is Hanukkah. And we're going to have a major campaign to do menorah pickups before Hanukkah, which not only do we want you to pick up menorah for yourself, even if you have one, but pick up a menorah too and give it to a friend that doesn't have one. So we're talking about in the hundreds here. So I'll give you all a little bit of homework. You can go troll through your own Facebook friends and see members of the tribe that may or may not have a menorah, and it's free. You can sponsor if you'd like, but it's free. You can take one. And we'll have a pickup time that's socially distanced and acceptable, and of course all that good stuff. So thanks for joining, and we'll open it up to some questions if you would like.